Let's watch a couple clips of The View where they actually make some profoundly insightful points as to why Trump's reckless plan to gut programs like the Department of Education, specifically for this video, are dangerous, and why more people should be alerted and aware of the possible outcomes and the things he's proposing to do. So I've lined a couple of these clips up to give us a chance to jump in after with the needed context.
The Department of Education is responsible for $18.4 billion that fund high poverty K through 12 schools, schools where kids are poor, kids that grew up in neighborhoods like I grew up in the South Bronx projects. $15.5 billion from the Department of Education is used to cover the cost of children with disabilities, children that have dyslexia, children that have other learning needs, that learn differently. And what happens with vouchers, the studies show very clearly that they fund students who are already attending private schools. So people with money get those vouchers, use the vouchers to pay less for their private schools, and their kids go on to do well. Where do you get the money from vouchers? You pull those money from those poor schools, poor schools. Let me just finish this. So wealthy families are overwhelmingly the recipients of school voucher tax credits.
There is a lot here, and it's really all very important. When we talk about the Department of Education and its importance, you have to think about the spectrum of kids who need educated, right? Where some are more high intensity and might need more attention or resources, others less, but the best way to ensure education to all of those, like those especially who need these additional resources, like the disabled, is through these kinds of programs the Department of Education funds, so that they're not being priced out of education, as it should be a right and not something that is only given to those who can afford it, or those who are lucky enough to be born into a situation where they don't have to pay for additional research sources or teachers who specialize in special education or this or that. And obviously we as a society as a whole benefit from being generally more educated as well. So it pays dividends down the line, as when you're more educated, you can make more money. When you make more money, you're putting more money in the economy through taxes, through more money you're spending, this and that. There's downstream benefit that you can see as well. And this is the main reason the Department of Education is very important, but one of many. And it's why we need to make sure that it's funded, right? But the alternative also is that we go to vouchers, and vouchers are proven to be inefficient. Most vouchers go to kids who are already in private school and have never been to public school. We've seen voucher programs cause more learning loss in test scores than happened during COVID. I've seen this in my home state of Indiana. And also another major problem with these private schools is that they aren't required by law to provide care to disabled students. So these disabled students are just being left behind at these schools that now are much less funded because all the wealthy families have left it. And there's a litany of other issues as well that just make this idea really dangerous and also really impractical.
A 2020 study found that only about half of states with voucher programs require teachers to have a bachelor's degree, require teachers to have training, require teachers to have licensing, require participating private schools.
If I may get in, just to make it a conversation.
But because I have children and because I looked at private schools.
I went to public school. I believe you got to go to private school.
There is zero statistical significance.
You got to go to private school.
Because nobody can figure out what's being said here right now. No, there is no last thing right now. We're going to go to break, and then we're going to come back.
Yes.
Because you can't, what's happening is no one can hear anything anyone is saying, so everybody has to
on it so we can talk.
This also speaks to another core importance of the Department of Education. It turns out when you don't regulate a standard of education for a school, they will cut every possible corner in the name of profit, with less qualified teachers, less qualified staff, less programs that they offer, and less safe environments for the children within them. And these are all things that the Department of Education provides regulations for to ensure in our public schools that you are just rolling the dice and hoping that you get in a private school. What we find happening is that in terms of the private sector, it's these super religious schools that are opening up, pushing these like anti-LGBTQ narratives, these super Christo-fascist conservative worldviews without having real curriculums, real learning plans, lesson plans, any real experience or idea how to, teach children what they need to know in terms of like relative to their age range. And a lot of the schools end up closing shortly after receiving the voucher money because of this, which makes them play as more of a money grab, where they know that they can get the money and then, they can make money off families. So why not try it? But without, quality standards, they obviously aren't going to last. I think in some studies, it's over 40% of schools that have went on the voucher program have closed since it opened, right? And the other problem you find is that vouchers often don't cover the full cost of the school, which leaves low-income families still unable to afford education at these private schools, now being left at public schools that are even further defunded as all the wealthy families are leaving. So it's just clear that this idea solves nothing and instead creates additional problems for middle and low-income earners. If anything, it's just making it a bit easier for wealthy people.
There is zero statistical significance that voucher programs improve overall student success. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Research has shown that students who use voucher programs to leave a public school and then attend a private school do worse academically,
but
especially
Linda McMahon,
in math and
who
English.
is going to head the Department of Education, gave $21 million to Trump, and that's why she's in that position.
If I could just respond to that, though.
Won 5 Emmys, and that's why he's in that position. I
personally worked.
Most research on the matter supports that socioeconomic factors are what actually play the most determinative factor in educational outcomes, not like just do you go to a private school or a public school, or do you go to school here or there, or do you learn this way or that way? And in that, obviously, private schools share a benefit if you're just looking at raw data, in that they have more wealth concentrated typically into their student base. But if you look at studies that take a kid with the socioeconomic status of a typical public school child, they perform no better or worse in a private school. There actually is some data that they perform a little worse, none to support them performing better. So it's funny because, again, with conservatives, they often love to talk about symptoms of problems, and then they try to create ways to address these symptoms, but they never want to talk about the root issue that leads to the symptoms, which is the true way that these things should be addressed, right? In this case, for these educational outcomes, it would be poverty or income inequality. And surprise, surprise, for a lot of things in our society, this would be the root cause. But it's like, for an analogy, it's like if you get a cut on your stomach and you notice that you have blood on your shirt. So you go and you change your shirt, but you do nothing about the cut on your stomach. Like, yeah, you fix the blood, but it'll be back in no time, right? You didn't really fix the problem that's causing the blood. The same problem exists, again, in many facets in America, in this context with education, where Republicans never want to address income inequality, but then the symptoms of it, like poor educational outcomes, they want to try and address while also blaming it on anything else that they can, when it's like, if we just get everyone on vouchers, then the same problems that we see that this lack of resources causes in public schools is just going to start causing in private schools. Private schools escape that now because their student base is currently only wealthy kids. But the second that income inequality floods into there, you're going to see the same problems. It's almost like if we addressed income inequality, we wouldn't see these issues. But I digress. I'm just a silly leftist, right? If you want kids to perform better in schools, start making sure that, first off, the schools are well funded, right? Funding schools through property taxes is a bit self-defeating because poorer neighborhoods will then always have poorer schools. They're going to have poorer properties to tax. And then we need to also make sure that we're putting money back into neighborhoods so that there's more wealth in the neighborhoods, more resources available for the students in the neighborhoods, and more opportunity at their fingertips. And then literally watch how fast the scores shoot up.